Hello everyone. Today we're going to walk through Lesson 3 and the Procure to Pay business process. The Procure to Pay business process. Basically, when you purchase items from a vendor, those items can be for internal use. They can be part of the raw materials that are needed to build the items that are the products and items that are for purchase from a customer. And so when we do business with a vendor, we use procurement, and the difference between purchase orders and customer orders is with customer orders, you are receiving an order from a customer, receiving payment from a customer. With regard to purchase orders, we are purchasing from a vendor. The vendor sends raw materials or whatever the items are needed for our inventory, and we pay the vendor. So with a customer order, it's accounts receivable, we are receiving the money. With procure to pay, it's accounts payable, we are paying the vendor for items that are being sent to replenish our inventory or to build our products that are sent to customers. The procure to pay process keeps track of vendor performance and allows us to look at the performance of a vendor. When we're deciding on vendor selection, we can use the performance information as a decision maker, which will indicate whether we want to continue to do business with that vendor or not. We can set default parameters for the purchase orders and the vouchers. Vouchers simply a method of making payments to the vendor. We can look at the planned cost versus the actual cost, the promised dates, whether they're meeting their due dates for the items that are ordered or not. We can also put vendors, place them on hold by using the payment hold feature. For example, if the product comes in and it's damaged, or if the order comes in and it's not the right products or the items that we ordered, then we can put the vendor payment on hold. We can also track the changes that we make if we make changes. If we receive a whole or a partial order, we can manage that through the procure to pay process as well. There are 4 steps in procure to pay: requisition, purchase order to receipt, invoice to payment, and return to debt. Today we're going to focus on purchase order to receipt. There are certain roles that will be associated with these business processes. The accountant, of course, will manage the financial reporting, the closing of the books at the end of the month, end of the fiscal year. The accountant will oversee accounts payable and accounts receivable. Then there's the buyer, who simply monitors the supplier and maybe creates a purchase order, establishes a contract, maintains schedules, and generates reports for the items that have been purchased. The payables administrator is the person who will generate the financial rolls for any new suppliers that are approved for use in the system. Registration of that supplier, approving, monitoring, and then ultimately paying the supplier is the responsibility of the payables administrator. Then we have the purchasing manager, whose primary role is to approve purchase orders, requisitions, return items to vendors, and adjust if there's any discrepancies in an invoice. So now we're going to start with exercise 3.1, where we will actually create our first purchase order and add some line items to the purchase order. So I'm going to log on to Mingle, and if you are following along, it is page 54 in your workbook. So the purchase order is something that basically would be maybe generated by the buyer, and then the purchasing manager would ultimately approve the purchase order, especially if it's over a certain amount. So we load Mingle. We did create a purchase order in lesson 2. You'll find the steps to generate, or we created a customer order in lesson 2. You will find the steps for creating a purchase order are very similar to those of creating a customer order. All right, so we'll go to the form menu and we will click open. And in step 1, we're looking for quick purchase order or purchase order quick form. So we search for purchase orders with an S. And you should see purchase order quick entry. That's the form that we need. So we click that. We click OK. And as always, we have to filter, which will show all current existing purchase orders. So we click filter. And then we're going to click new, which will allow us to generate a brand new purchase order. So step number 3 tells us you're going to create a purchase order number, which will be the letters PO and then your 3-digit number. I'm going to use 325, then an underscore and a question mark. The question mark is a wildcard. Oh, I forgot the A. 325A for item A. 325 underscore question mark. The question mark, the purpose of the question mark is to actually generate the purchase order. So when we save the purchase order, this question mark is going to change to a system generated number. If it's the first PO we've created for this account, it will be 001. If it's the second one, it'll be 002, and so on. Okay, then for the vendor, if you click on the drop down, you can do a search. Our items are not in here because our items are above 300. So we do the wildcard, V underscore 3 asterisk, which then will allow us to bring up all vendors of 300 or above. My vendor number is 325, and we're using item A. 325 and item A. Later on, we'll create another purchase order for item B. Right now, we're just going to focus on item A. Then we're going to create a vendor purchase order number. That vendor PO number will map to this PO number. The vendor PO number and our PO number are different numbers, but we will create one here. And this is step number 4 on page 54, VPO A. And then since this is our first vendor order, we'll give it the number 001. VPOA 001. All right, so that was step 4. In step 5, we'll create our line items. So we click in the line item box, and the wildcard search doesn't work here because there are so many items in the database, so the wildcard search doesn't work. So we just type in our item underscore 325 in my case. In your case, you will use your item number. 325A is mine. Yours will be whatever the number that's been assigned to you. The 3-digit number that has been assigned to you should go here instead of 325. Then we want the quantity per the instructions, and this is line number item or step number 5 on page 55. Or actually, nope, it's step number 5. Yeah, it is step number 5 on page 55. Okay, so the quantity is going to be 10. And we're going to use a due date 1 week from today. So today is the 10th. We go with the 17th. We're going to create a second line item. So we go up to our menu and we click the save, or the new button rather. Click the new button. That gives us item number 2. And the same thing, we want item underscore 325 underscore A. Quantity is still going to be 10. This time the due date for the second line item is going to be 1 month from today. So it will be November 10th. All right, so we've got one that's due on a week from today, and the second item due a month from today. All right, so then when you save the PO, notice that the question mark, when I click save, the question mark will then have a number, a system generated number associated with it. If it's the first purchase order, that number should be 001. And it is. So now we have our first purchase order. It maps to our vendor's purchase order, and it's item 325A. We're going to save this purchase order. And then we're going to go to the form menu. We're going to create a new purchase order. So we open up the same form again, purchase order, quick entry. And we're going to repeat the same steps this time for item B. So we have a purchase order for item A. Now we're going to create a new purchase order for item B. Our purchase order number will be PO, and then your 3-digit number. Mine is still 325. This time it will be the letter B for item B, and we'll do the wildcard again. So PO 325B underscore and a question mark. The vendor will be still our wildcard we can do here. We do have a vendor for item B, so we will use that vendor. The vendor 325 underscore B. Our purchase order will be VPO, the letter B this time instead of A, underscore, and it is the first order for this vendor for item B, so it's still 001. VPO B underscore 001. The line items, this time our line items are going to be item, your 3-digit number, and the letter B. The order date, or the order quantity is 10. The due date, a week from today. And now I'm at the bottom of page 55, step number 5. Then we want a new item. So we click the new button. That gives us line item 2. We want item 325 for me, whatever your number is for you, and the letter B. The quantity is still 10. The due date this time, 1 month from today. All right, so then we save the form. And that gives us our purchase order number. It also tells us to refresh the form so that we enable some of the other functionality that we'll be using in the next exercise. Okay, so now we're changing the status from planned to ordered. You'll get a message that says change status, change PO status will be performed. You click OK. Now, you also have to change the status for the line items, and in order to see that, you have to scroll, so you got to go down to, so you see the scroll bar which takes you across. You cannot see it unless you scroll down. So be sure to scroll down, then scroll across until you get to status. You're going to change this status. For line item 1, change the status to ordered. Click OK for the message. And do the same for line item 2. Change that status also to ordered. Click OK. Save the form. All right, now let's go back to our other one and do the same thing. Change the status. This is for item A. Change the status to ordered. And then scroll down. Change the status for each line item in item A. This is line item 1. Change that status to ordered. Click OK. Same for for line item 2. We click ordered for that one too. So we've changed the status for both of our purchase orders, for item A and for item B. Okay, now when we click refresh, you want to save that. Absolutely, you want to save it. When you toggle between your items, item 1 or item A and item B, it should enable the quick purchase order button. If it doesn't, simply toggle over here between the two, from B to A or from A to B, and then that button, which was disabled, should be enabled. Then you're going to click the quick purchase order button. And this is step number 12 on page 56. This is going to generate your purchase order report. The purchase order report then would be used by the buyer, probably by the payables manager, to approve purchase orders and things like that. Usually it would be generated by the buyer in most cases. When it does load, you can see an example, a sample purchase order on page 57 in your workbook. Once this one loads, you will see this one, very nicely formatted purchase order report. And it looks like this. It shows the items. I used item A. You can generate the report for item B. It doesn't matter. Either one of those items will be acceptable, item A or item B. And it should show the quantity of 10. The price for 10 is $100. Total price is going to be $200. This is the amount that we would eventually, in the next few exercises, we would send an invoice to, or pay the invoice to the vendor for these items. You will download this report, and simply change the name, purchase order, and your last name. I already have one, so I'll save this one too. And this form you will upload for exercise 3.1. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. You should find it fairly straightforward though. All right, so we'll continue on. We've created 2 purchase orders. Now we're going to receive the items, assuming that the vendor has delivered the items, which takes a few days, few weeks, whatever. The vendors have delivered our items. Now we're going to receive the items, and that will update our inventory. Okay, so we go back to Mingle. And I'm on page 58. On the purchase order form, hopefully you still have it open. If not, just open it and filter, and then click your purchase order. You'll see it in this list over here. You can just open it and click it, and it will reload your purchase order for you. Once the order is loaded, you should see a button called Order Receiving. You're going to click the Order Receiving button. This is going to open the purchase order form and populate your current purchase order and the 2 line items. Line item 1 and line item number 2 with the status of ordered. All right, so you select the first purchase order. You make sure the quantity is 10. For both of them. Then you click the Receive button. What happened? Well, first you've got to select them. Always a good idea. Oh, that's step number 3. Do not skip step number 3, then there will be nothing to receive. All right, so you select them, both line items, then you click Receive. It should show 2 items have been posted. It may take a second. 2 pending PO receiving transactions were posted. That's what you want to see. If it says 0, it's probably because you didn't select your line items, just as I did a few minutes ago. So now, when you go back to your purchase order, notice that the line items have disappeared. Why? Because they have been received. You're going to change the status from ordered to filled. Now you can see the line items. What I want you to do here then is to take a snapshot, a screenshot. Usually it's click print screen. And then you can open a Word document. So you've copied, and you right click, and you hit paste. This shows several things. Actually, let me change my layout to landscape so you can get a better view. You don't have to do this. This is just for appearances, purely cosmetic. So I'm going to make it bigger so you can read it. All right, so now this will show me two things. First, it will show the purchase order number, the vendor number. It will show the two line items. It will show the status as filled. And this is what you will submit as your lesson 3.2. So you will then just save this, do a save as, and you'll call this receive order, your last name, and you will upload this, save it in your, wherever you save your work. I have a folder for mine, so I'll put it in my folder, if I can find my folder. I'll put it in my lesson 3 folder. Receive order, last name, your last name, save that. And that is the second document you will upload for exercise 3.2. So now you should have uploaded your first purchase order and a document that verifies that you have received or that you have sent a receipt for these two items that were generated in the purchase order. And so that is the first two exercises, 3.1 and 3.2. Again, if you have any questions about any of those exercises, please feel free to drop me a line, or you can check with me during my office hours, which is tomorrow at 11 a.m. Otherwise,